All right, so I am Joanne Backrack. I am your presenter for today, and today we're going over KEPServerEX version 5.18, which was released this month, June 2015. Common question we get during this webinar, will the recording be available afterwards? Yes, we do send out the recording as well as a PDF of the slides within a day or two of the broadcast. Sometimes it does take a couple days, so if you don't see it immediately after the webinar, you will see it within a day or two. We also post our recordings at YouTube, so if for whatever reason you don't receive that email, you can certainly email us at training@kepware.com to get the information, or just go to our YouTube channel and we have a library of webinars posted there. You can also follow for upcoming webinars if you're interested in seeing what's on the agenda. You can follow Kepware's LinkedIn training spotlight page for information, and the link is there. So if you go to our company page, Kepware Product Training, you can see upcoming webinar topics. Great, so before we get started on the KEPServerEX 5.18 material, we've started to do, for all of our webinars, a little introduction to Kepware for the beginners on the call and people who may not know Kepware or might be beginners with our product and know who we are. So I'll just briefly give you a little background on our company. We are headquartered in Portland, Maine. That's our global headquarters. And we were established about 20 years ago, and we really just laser focus on connection in industrial automation and the automation industry. We started in manufacturing, but we branch out through all kinds of different verticals, oil and gas, IT. We have a new Internet of Things initiative coming down the pipeline. So lots of different industry cover there for our software products, as well as we have, global partners and global customers all around the world. I actually just got back from a trip to the Middle East and Asia where I was training our partners abroad. So pretty widespread adoption of our software. The software we develop, our flagship is our communications platform, KEPServerEX, which we'll talk more about. And then we also have some, other products that we offer, LinkMaster, Redundancy Master for bridging and redundancy, as well as a ClientAce product, which is a toolkit that you can use with Visual Studio for client connectivity. I do want to mention at this point that we have released a new version of ClientAce, and it is available now, and that you can go and get that along with the KEPServerEX, the new KEPServerEX version 5.18. For the rest of this webinar, we're going to be focusing on KEPServerEX, which is our communications platform that has a big library of protocols that we connect to and provides all kinds of applications, different type of real-time, historical, and alarm data. So KEPServerEX, it's one install. It's one single software program. You install it, and with the install, you get all kinds of connectivity at what we say the client level. You can connect to things like network monitoring systems, historian clients, vendor-specific clients, maybe generic OPC clients like HMI or SCADA systems, databases, IoT products like Splunk, and even vertical industry-specific products like oil and gas uses FlowCal software. So that's what we call the client level. We serve data up to the client level from devices or data sources, which could be other databases or PLCs or RTUs and so on and so forth. So the nice thing about KEPServerEX and it just being one install is it's consolidating all of this different data into one format in one place. Just providing consistent, reliable data definitely goes a long way towards simplifying your system, reduces maintenance, decreases system resource usage, and even network traffic if you just have it all centralized in this one location. And then we have some very easy to use tool for deployment, tag generation to upload different items and tag points from these devices into the server. Linking and computation options. We'll talk about advanced tag enhancements in a minute, and things like device discovery and security. So that's our KEPServerEX product, and that's what we'll be talking today. I am interested in, before we get into the meat of this webinar of the 5.18 release, are you coming here because you're interested in upgrading? So I'm going to launch this poll question, and let me know if are you actually interested in upgrading to 518 now or in the future, or maybe you're not interested in upgrading but you're just here for general info, or maybe you're unsure or don't know. I'm going to ask poll questions throughout the webinar. These are very helpful to understand, for me to understand who's on the line, who you guys are, and what information you're interested in. So just let me know, answer this poll question. I'll leave it open a couple more seconds. So are you interested in upgrading? Yes, no, or unsure? Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and close that. And it looks like 37% of you are interested in upgrading, and a good majority of you, 53%, are unsure. So we'll see. Maybe you'll get a little more clarity throughout this webinar and understand if an upgrade is right for you. A common question we have is, how do I upgrade? What are the upgrade steps? So on and so forth. If you have that question, please feel free to email us training@kepware.com or contact our technical support team to learn about upgrades. Okay, great. So KEPServerEX version 5 release. What did this version encompass? This version includes enhancements to our media level redundancy plugin, new real-time tag editing capabilities, support for an oil and gas specific driver called ABB Totalflow for new data, for trend data and liquid EFM from that. Also specific to oil and gas is our new Fisher Rock and Rock Plus Ethernet drivers. And then we have some enhancements to KEPServerEX existing plugins, which includes enhancements to our scheduler plugin, as well as enhancements to link tag within advanced tags, which we'll get to towards the end of the webinar. One more question before we begin. I'd also like to know, what is your experience level with KEPServerEX? So rate your experience from 1 to 5, 1 being no experience and 5 being an expert. Again, this will help me tailor the webinar content to you and understand, how much baseline information I should cover before going on to maybe more advanced topics. So what is your experience level? Rate your experience 1 to 5, 1 being no experience and 5 an expert. I'm going to leave that open a couple more seconds, so please answer that if you would. Okay, great. So I'll close that poll and share the results with you. Looks like we have an even spread and even maybe a nice bell curve going on with a lot of you rating yourself in the mid-range. So won't spend too much time covering the basic topics because it seems like a lot of you already have some experience with KEPServerEX, which is maybe what I would expect with someone attending a release webinar. Okay, great. All right, so we'll first talk about media level redundancy enhancements. So what is media level redundancy, first and foremost? It's a feature that many of the drivers in KEPServerEX support. Users can use this to fail over between device connections. So for example, maybe I have my primary connection to a device maybe this is a remote device. Maybe this primary connection is a cellular connection and the secondary connection is like a serial radio modem connection to this remote device. If for some reason the primary cellular connection fails, KEPServer runtime with media level redundancy configured would fail over to the secondary radio modem connection. So that's, 2 connections, primary and secondary, to the same device. You can also configure it in a failover mode where maybe you have 2 PLCs, they're monitoring the same process, and if this primary PLC fails, KEPServerEX runtime would automatically switch over to the secondary. So those are the 2 what we call media level redundancy setups, and what we're going to focus on today is this setup. So you configure these settings in the configuration window for KEPServerEX. This is KEPServerEX configuration window in device properties. So you see here I have a Modbus RTU device and then a backup device, and I've specified my backup device in my primary device as the secondary. And right now this is set to a switch on failure mode. So I'll highlight to you the change. So all of these redundancy options you see here in the screenshot that existed prior to 5.18, the change is a new operating mode called switch on trigger. And so I'll cover that in a minute, but first I'm going to go over a kind of cool customer use case and use this as the baseline for the demo I'll show you. So potential use case for this media level redundancy option is maybe you have some remote devices, right? So you have a device network, it's isolated. You might have some devices out in the field, or for whatever reason this device network is isolated from maybe like a corporate network. And so you have some firewalls you have to get through and some network barriers you have to get through. And in order to do that, you use what we call our OPC UA Tunneling solution, where you install KEPServerEX local to the device network. And then you use KEPServerEX UA server in conjunction with what we call our OPC UA client driver on the client side on the corporate network to tunnel secure information across that network. And that's actually really easy to set up. You just need to set up what we call an OPC UA endpoint URL on this UA server side of the tunnel, and then set up our OPC UA client driver on the client side of the tunnel, and you get actually 128 or 256-bit encryption over a single dedicated TCP port. So much easier to set up than maybe something like DCOM, or and much easier to get working as far as IT setup goes. So you decide to go with that solution to bridge data between maybe your remote device network or isolated device network and your corporate network. And then you decide, okay, I want to build in redundancy to my solution. So I'm going to have a primary UA server and a secondary UA server. Well, now with media level redundancy, you can say, all right, I'm going to have KEPServerEX intelligently decide when to fail over between the primary and the secondary. And I'll show you in a minute the switch on trigger mode can say, okay, I'm going to pick a tag from this device or a tag from the server that says I want to fail over to the secondary side of the tunnel when something happens, when a tag changes or I detect something happening, a monitor item changing in the primary server. I'm going to switch over to the secondary. So that's OPC UA tunneling with redundancy built in using media level redundancy. So I'm just going to demo this real quickly to you. I have a few things set up here. So on my machine here, and this is my actual host machine with a green background here, I have KEPServerEX installed. And this is what is going to be, if I look back at my diagram, this is what's going to act as my client side of the tunnel. So pretend that this machine is on my corporate network. And I'm going to tunnel through using the OPC UA client driver that I've already previously set up here using the OPC UA client. I've set up a channel device and tag. And if I get into device properties, I can actually see, if I go to the import tab, I can do select import items and see how I can browse through and just pull in more tag items if I so desire. So I already did that, and I already have a few tag items that I imported from my primary OPC UA client. And just for the purposes of this demo, I have a tag called error indicator, machine ID, and just a ramping tag called tag 1. I've also made a connection to my secondary machine. So pretty much exact same setup. It has the same project in there with the error indicator, machine ID, tag 1. But if I look in the channel properties for the secondary, I see 163 IP here. So that's my OPC UA endpoint or my OPC UA URL for my secondary machine, and you can see I'm using 256-bit encryption. And then if I go into my primary, I see that I'm connected to another URL, 179, and I'm still using the same 256-bit encryption. So this URL is actually referencing a VM that I have set up on my machine. My primary UA server is this VM that I have set up with those 3 tags. You see channel 1, device 1, and then the error indicator, machine ID, and tag 1. And then this secondary machine is actually Kylie Corrigan's machine. She's sitting here with me. She's an application engineer here in the room. and I'm connecting to this secondary machine on her computer, to a server on her computer. So if you look at the diagram, this is my VM, this primary server side of the tunnel, and the secondary server side is Kylie's machine. And you can tell that my VM is here, the primary is this purple background here. So I'm going to switch between my VM and with the purple background and my host machine here with the green background to demo to you how this works. So to set up redundancy, what I'm going to do is get into Properties, right-click on my primary device and go Properties, and I see this Redundancy tab. Here I specify my secondary device, so that's going to be the secondary OPC UA server that I have set up here. So I just click on the little device icon here to browse for that in my server config, and click on my secondary device there, apply. And then operating mode, switch on failure is going to be the default, and again, new in 5.18 is a switch on trigger operating mode. So this means I can specify a monitor item or a trigger item that will actually trigger the failover. So instead of the advantage of this switch on failure, I would have had to detect basically a massive failure. So maybe the entire piece of hardware, entire machine on my primary server side goes down to trigger the failover. But perhaps I want to failover in the case of something else that's maybe not a massive failover, but something like detect a device tag that's failing, or some other error indicator in this primary server that makes me want to failover. So there's definitely, granularity added in with this new operating mode, which says, okay, instead of waiting for a massive failure of the primary server, we can have more control over what triggers a failover and failover the secondary server side. So we don't have to wait for the entire machine to go down to switch over. So that's the advantage of this new switch on trigger mode. Trigger item I'm going to choose is in the primary server, and it's this error indicator that I've already set up as a tag, and I can choose to fail over to the secondary if the quality on that tag goes bad, if I don't see a data change in a certain amount of time, or on a value. And I'm going to say choose value, and I'm going to say, okay, if that error indicator goes high, if it goes to a 1, then I want to fail over to my secondary server. So go ahead and apply that and close, and you see now I can tell I have redundancy set up on this device because it has the double device icon. So let's look at what a failover looks like. So right now, if I look at my OPC UA client primary channel 1, my machine ID tells me, okay, I'm on the primary machine. So that means I am connected to this primary server on my VM. And you see, indeed, I have one client connected with 3 active tags. And my error indicator is 0, and I see my ramping tag come through. So I'm simply, to trigger the failover, going to write this error tag to a 1. So my error indicator needs to go high, and I'll see the write go through, and as soon as the write goes through, I switch over to my secondary. You see it was pretty seamless failover. My error indicator is 0 on the secondary, and I still see that ramp tag come through, but the value changed slightly because the ramping value was at a different place on the secondary machine. And I'm still monitoring my primary machine, so I still have an active tag because I'm still monitoring that error indicator, but you see that the other tag references actually switched over, and I can see all those here. So I'm on my secondary machine even though it says primary here because my primary channel was failed over to that secondary path. Now all I have to do is go to my primary machine here, and if I look at that error indicator tag, it's a 1. If I right click on that and write to it, write it back down to a 0, I should see that my active tag count gets bumped up because my client switched back over, and I see my machine ID went back to the primary. So I flip back to my primary UA server. So very straightforward to set up. Didn't take me very long to get that going at all. I was able to do that this morning within maybe 20 minutes. Getting this setup going was not hard. Great. So that was it for the demo for media level redundancy and just showing how that can work with our UA client tunneling option. We do have some drivers that do not support media level redundancy. Many of our drivers do support it, but there's a short list of drivers that do not. So if you find a driver on here listed in our knowledge base, then it means it will not support it. But if you don't see it there, then your driver does support media level redundancy. So summary of the new features I've just demoed to you: the switch on trigger operating mode, very advantageous if you want to switch on something besides kind of a overall system failure. You can switch when a specific value is obtained, the quality goes bad, or you're not getting an update in a certain amount of time and a certain rate of change. And that condition is going to be evaluated at whatever rate the user defines. Okay. So that's it for media level redundancy. If you have any questions, again, feel free to type that into your questions pane, and we will answer them. Actually, I see one very good question from Chris Carlson. He's asking, is there an option for manual failback to primary instead of automatically failing back to primary? So in this failover scenario, let's get back into device properties and back into the redundancy tab. You see here that if I do a switch on failover, I do have this checkbox to return to primary connection immediately after failover. So I can uncheck that and do the manual. Does not look like that's a checkbox here on the switch on trigger mode. So, and that's because we're monitoring the trigger, and the trigger is determining when we fail between secondary or primary when we switch back. So we're using the trigger to determine that logic versus switch on failover. I have the option to either return to the primary if I see that connection come back up, or do it manually myself if I uncheck that box. So good question. The answer to your question is yes, you can do a manual switchover if you're using the switch on failover mode. Okay, tag editing. So KEPServerEX, we have to be flexible, secure, and provide a really high level of data and system integrity. System administrators, they need to be able to make changes on the fly while the server is running and instantly apply those changes. So if you have, you're spinning up a new station, or you have a new device you want to have come online, you want to be able to add in things, and then if for whatever reason, maybe you get the data type wrong on some tags when you're adding them to the server, you want to be able to change those on the fly even after you connect your HMI or SCADA system. Well, in KEPServerEX version 5.12, which I believe was in 2013, we stopped allowing these type of edits, and it was because we were trying to make have greater integrity and make our system more secure so that people couldn't do these kind of on-the-fly edits if a client was connected. So you see here in my screenshot, a client's connected, and I had gone in and tried to change maybe just the data type of tag 1, and it says update failed because active connections still exist. So you would have had to, in this scenario, prior to this release, disconnect all clients, edit the tag, and then reconnect. That isn't necessarily feasible for system administrators. They want to be able to make these edits and do simple things like data type changes or address changes without having to bring down maybe the entire plant operations. So we've added this feature back in 5.18, which is exciting, and we've configured it in a way that we have alleviated the original security concerns and integrity concerns that made us remove it in version 5.12 in an earlier version of the server. So tag edits are now allowed. They are fully editable in real time while the server is operational. Server does not need to be reinitialized. Clients do not need to be disconnected. New tag definitions are applied to the client in real time, and connected clients react the same way as if the new tag definition was provided to them on an initial connection. This functionality is global. It applies across all drivers and plugins, and it should be a big headache reliever for some of you who may have run into these issues in the past. So quick demo on that. I'm going to get into my VM to show you this. So here I have channel 1, device 1, and I have this tag 1 that I was using before. So I'm going to connect to client, and I see, okay, there's my tag 1, it's ramping. And right now my tag 1 is a Word data type, so I'm going to get into tag properties here, which allows me to define the name, the address, and so on. I'm going to change that data type to a float because maybe I defined the wrong data type when I first created this project. And I say OK, and I see the change was accepted, data type changed to a float. I go back into my quick client, data type changed to a float there too, and indeed I am getting floating point values in my value field now. So real quick and easy, not hard at all. Another example, I can right click here, go properties, and maybe I just want to change the address here. So instead of an R, which is a ramping address for our simulator driver, I'm just going to do a constant K address, which is just a constant memory value. So if I apply that and go back to my client, I see indeed my ramp stopped, which means I'm not referencing that ramping address anymore, and I'm now referencing that constant address. And I can obviously reverse that change to go back to the R address, which is the ramp, and I see the ramp continue. So real quick and easy. I'm not getting any messages in my event log. I'm not experiencing any integrity issues or security issues here. It's easy for me to get in and change it and for my client to receive that update. Great. So seems simple enough, seems straightforward enough, but definitely a boon to the people who want to make a lot of changes on the fly like that. So what can you edit? You can edit anything that you saw in that tag properties window, tag name, address, data type, and client read-write privileges. You can also edit entire tag, what we call tag databases. So say you configure Allen Bradley control logics connection to our server. Allen Bradley allows what we call automatic tag generation from the device, so we can go out to the controller, grab the entire program and all the items existing in that controller and suck them into KEPServerEX. You can do that automatic tag generation on the fly with clients connected and be able to modify your tag databases that way. You can also do that kind of global database tag edit through CSV import and export while clients are connected with these new changes. So if you need more information on these new tag editing features, our product owner Aaron Semley posted a blog post recently about these real-time tag updates and gives you some use cases and examples of how to use it and how it applies. So go ahead, go to our blog and read his post there if you want more info. So poll question, we just covered, existing functionality that we had previously but that we tweaked or improved. So I want to know, do you think that this is going to improve your application of implementation of KEPServerEX? So do you believe that either media level redundancy or those new tag editing capabilities will improve your application or implementation, or both of them will? Or maybe you don't think either of them will, it doesn't apply to you, or you're unsure, you don't know. So please let me know if what you think as far as those enhancements and if they're going to actually improve your experience with the software and your application. Leave that open for a few more seconds, so please answer the poll question on the screen. Leave that open for a few more seconds. So will these new changes improve your application or implementation? Please let us know. Okay, so I'll share the results with you. And yeah, that's great. It's good to see. Probably this is kind of what I've expected. So it looks like 37%, which is great, say both of these will help your application. That's good to hear. And then a third of you say, just tag editing is definitely going to help you. So definitely good to see and good to know that we were on the right track with doing those improvements. Great. So we are going to move on to oil and gas specific information for the next couple items, and then circle back to some maybe more globally applicable items with advanced tags on our scheduler towards the end. But for right now, it's going to be pretty oil and gas focused for the next 10 minutes or so. I'm going to take a break to just answer a couple questions that I see coming in. So someone asked for the tag editing stuff, can you delete or add devices on the fly? And the answer to that is yes, you can definitely add devices on the fly. And if you delete devices, you can delete them, but obviously the quality is going to go bad in your client. So good question there. And yes, you can always add devices or channels on the fly, no problem there, and delete them as well. But obviously you're gonna get some bad quality in your SCADA or HMI. Okay, looking for other questions. It looks like someone asked about dynamic. A couple people have asked about dynamic tags, David and Ola, about tag editing with the dynamic tags. You can obviously, we've always supported what's called dynamic tags, which means you can just add a tag from your client. That's always been available, and that definitely with the new tag editing capabilities, that hasn't changed. So you can always add dynamic tags from your client and manage your tags that way from your client instead of managing them from the server. Okay, good question. So continue to ask those questions in your questions pane, and our people here will continue to answer you. And in the meantime, I'm going to move on to some of the oil and gas specific stuff. First, ABB Totalflow trend data and liquid EFM. So ABB Totalflow, ABB is a vendor of flow computers, and they're one of the leading platforms for control at the wellhead as well as hydrocarbon measurement, where the devices are measuring, calculating, storing what we call electronic flow measurement or EFM data. ABB has a proprietary protocol they use to communicate with their flow computers, and that's maintained by ABB. Kepware, previous to this release, had already developed an ABB Totalflow driver that uses this protocol to communicate with the flow computers for that real-time data and that historical EFM data. Well, aside from storing the real-time and EFM data, these devices can also store what's called trend logs, which are user-defined arrays of registers that log real-time data points, such as flow rates or pressures or temperatures, battery charge, you see that up here, and so on and so forth, flow rates. Users are able to define in the flow computer a logging frequency and a number of records to store per trend log file. And then they maybe want to add that trend data to a schedule and suck it into their SCADA or analytics systems to be able to chart that and view that on their other applications. So in the scenario where available network bandwidth doesn't allow for frequent communications, you really want these high resolution trend logs and be able to upload them periodically or whenever you desire to analyze your well production. So instead of constantly monitoring for real-time data, you want to be able to just upload these trend log files at maybe a much slower rate than real-time. In KEPServerEX version 5.18, users can now upload this trend data via the ABB Totalflow driver. So not only do we support the real-time and EFM data, but also the trend log file upload. So that's one change. The other enhancement here is EFM capabilities that have been expanded for this driver. So we have what's called the EFM exporter for KEPServerEX, which allows users to collect historical gas and liquid EFM data from flow computers and RTUs. ABB Totalflow devices supported gas EFM export prior to this release, but now we also support liquid, so you can both gas and liquid data and export that for the ABB flow computer. And the liquid data is, for now, only supported in the FlowCal CFX format. So you can get that for your ABB flow computers. So just an overall look at this driver, what it now supports, and in addition to its past features, the newer features. So gas and liquid EFM data collection, the trend log file retrieval, and it supported this previously, but it's good to highlight that we do have Ethernet encapsulation since this is serial communication. You can encapsulate serial over Ethernet as a communication option. So the ABB Totalflow, how do you license it? It is licensed individually, or you can roll it up in a suite. So the EFM suite includes our EFM exporter, which is a plugin for exporting your EFM data. And then 4 different flow computers, the ABB Totalflow, Enron Modbus, the Fisher-Rock flow computers, and OmniFlow computer. So that's it for ABB. I'm not going to do a demo or anything for that. And then the next thing we'll move on to talk about is our Fisher-Rock and Rock Plus. So background on this, Fisher-Rock Suite for KEPServerEX communicates to the Emerson Remote Automation Solutions, RAS, line of Flowbus and Rock RTUs, which is used in the oil and gas industry for process control and hydrocarbon measurement at the wellhead and in midstream facilities. These capabilities provide data to SCADA, HMI, and other measurement applications. So in version 5.18 beyond, we've added new Fisher-Rock Ethernet and Fisher-Rock Plus Ethernet and drivers, in addition to our existing serial drivers. So the serial drivers did support what we call Ethernet encapsulation previously, where you could do serial over Ethernet, but now we have these 2 new Ethernet drivers to just extend that support. Now the separate drivers for serial and Ethernet are just going to make it quick and easy for configuring device communications. So what is the new suite features now that we've added in? So previous existing features and new features that we've added in. So we did previously support automatic tag generation from the RTU or file. We also, then that's for rapid deployment. We have the serial and Ethernet communication, support for EFM data collection, access to user-defined points or UDPs for enabling data used in user programs, support for opcode 180 for multiple point reads, opcode 167 for single point reads, and opcodes 10 and 11 for reading and writing to user configurable tables. All right, so the Fisher-Rock devices can also be, purchased individually or in the oil and gas suite or in the EFM suite. And here's just a sampling of what else comes in the oil and gas suite in case you decide to license it that way. Great, so that pretty much wraps up the oil and gas specific portion of the webinar. Again, no demos for that, but some really good enhancements that happened for those 2 oil and gas specific drivers. All right, so let's wrap it up with some other enhancements for KEPServerEX. First, we have our scheduler plugin for KEPServerEX. Just a background on this, we did release this in February of 2015 with our version 5.17. And what it allows you to do is just intelligently schedule remote data communication in the server, manage and balance data requests in the server instead of letting connected applications like maybe your historian HMI or SCADA dictate pull rates and scan rates. You manage that central to the server, and the reason you'd want to do that is because you want to manage these limited bandwidth remote connections in a central place instead of having to configure it in each individual connected application. So that allows, network administrators to gain control over rogue or maybe network starving applications that would connect and try to start getting a fast scan of real-time updates instead of waiting their turn. The nice thing is that in the scheduler, you can organize polls by criticality or priority. So, if your SCADA data is going to be a higher priority than your historian data, and your historian wants data at the same time as the SCADA would get priority over the network. So, nice central way to manage data collection. So, we've added some new features in 5.18. We now support prioritization across virtualized channels. We can clear a channel pending reads, which is pretty neat because, if you have a bunch of pending reads going out over your network and you just want to say, okay, clear that. I don't want that to go out. I don't want my network to be burdened with that. Then you can clear them. We've improved the UI feedback to show users when devices are being scheduled, or what we call in a demand pull only mode. And we've added the ability to pull an EFM meter on demand. So that wasn't a possibility before. Now you can. So to learn more about the scheduler, again, we released that in 5.17. Tons of information available in our webinar for that release, as well as we have like a short 10 to 15 minute video tutorial on YouTube on the scheduler. Aaron Semley wrote a white paper on the scheduler and scheduling data collection. Senior application engineer Sam Elsner created a 2-part blog series on the scheduler with tons of great information, use case info. So tons of material available if you want to learn more. This is licensed separately from other Kepware products, and currently you would have to call in to sales for pricing. Great. So the next enhancement is advanced tags. And background on advanced tags is a plugin that we've used and we have had for a long time. Before I came to Kepware, this plugin existed. And advanced tags are pretty cool. It's like a giant calculator, and they use any static tags that you already have defined in your server. So maybe you have a couple device tags. And you can use what we call derived tag to create a tag expression. So maybe you want to add 2 tags or multiply or divide or do like a Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion or do logic like an and or an or. You can do that with derived tag. And then you can also do things like an average or the minimum or maximum of a tag over time. And basically what you're doing in this case is combining tags or using tag information to generate a new result. What this does is, makes information central to your server and able to pass up kind of aggregated information instead of just raw data up to higher level clients. So passing up a calculation instead of passing up the raw data and forcing the client to do that calculation. So the enhancement to this was to what we call our link tag. And our link tag is a tag that allows you to take data and tag from one PLC. So for example, I have my PLC 1 configured here, a pressure tag, and then output that to maybe another PLC. So I have my pressure tag, I'm outputting that to this holding register I have in maybe another Modbus device or something like that. So I'm linking from my PLC 1 to my Modbus RTU. And I have different options for when to trigger that link. So previous we supported, just trigger the link anytime pressure 1 changes, trigger the link to holding 1. We also have like a time-based link. So anytime, every 1 second, trigger pressure 1 to holding 1, link the value. So the trigger type that we've added for 5.18 is this while trigger comparison true. So we didn't have a while option where it's like, okay, I want to, while I have some trigger true, I want to link this data, as opposed to either doing it all the time or at a set rate or on a trigger edge. So while trigger comparison true, I have this set up in the screenshot here to say, okay, whenever PLC1 is enabled, its enabled system tag is set to 1, trigger the link. And then if for whatever reason it is disabled, stop linking, which kind of makes sense, right? So I can just show this to you real quick. I have my link tag. I can right click and go new link tag. I define my input and my output, and then I can define, okay, I always want to link, so maybe I always link at a 1 second rate, or on a trigger comparison true, so when a trigger comparison is met, or just while it's true, so while a trigger is valid. So that's the enhancements to advanced tags link tag. We do have quite a lot of information, so if you go into our help files, plugin help, and go into the advanced tags plugin help, and these help files are also available online. We have all kinds of information now in our link tag help. This link tag behavior matrix was published by our development group, our development engineers. That lets you know, okay, these are my different trigger types. So I have my always, my while, and my on. Lets you know what the behavior is going to be. So when is my data going to be linked? So just a little extra guidance for you with this new enhancement, this new change, in case you need to know that new behavior. Okay, great. So that's all I have for content as far as, what change in 5.18. And I want to know these adjustments, how much do they impact you and your application? So everything I just talked about, from tag editing to media level redundancy to link tags to maybe even the oil and gas stuff, how much do these adjustments impact you and your application? So is this really going to impact you? Are you going to upgrade and definitely feel the impact of these changes and be able to use them, or maybe not at all, or so a 1 would be, no, it's not going to impact me at all, and a 5 would be, yeah, it's definitely going to impact how I use the product. So leave that up for a few seconds. And if you're answering a 5, you might want to just type into your questions pane, just let us know, why is it going to impact you, and if you have any questions concerning that, would be good. Okay, I'll leave this open for about 10 more seconds. Great, so I'll close that out and share the results with you. And it looks like, again, a nice little bell curve here with 46% of you say middle of the road. They'll impact me, somewhat. So great. Let us know if you have any questions, and obviously you can always contact us, technical support, if you need help implementing any new configuration changes. Okay, so let's just review. We had our new failover options for media level redundancy, and I demoed that with the OPC UA client tunnel. Real-time edits, any tag, huge global change there. Some oil and gas specific things, ABB Totalflow driver, Fisher Rock and Rock Plus Ethernet drivers, and then enhancements to KEPServerEX plugins, scheduler, and advanced tags link tag. And then I did mention very briefly at the start of this, we have a new client ACE version. So tons of stuff coming out. Last question of the day, would you like to use any of these features? So anything we just talked about, I wasn't able to put client ACE up here because I'm only allowed 5 different options, but this is multiple answer, multiple choice, so you can select multiple of these options. Are you going to use any of these new features? So let us know what you're going to use, and that'll be good info for us for the future for prioritizing maybe future enhancements and developments. So again, leave that poll question open. And if you're not going to use anything, you don't have an option, so you can just not vote. We'll leave that open for about 10 more seconds. Wonderful. Thank you so much for participating in these surveys. They give us tons of information and good data for me while we're presenting, and also to help us, target new enhancements. So it looks like, lots of you are going to use tag editing, and then 50% said media level redundancy and link tags. So that's really good to see. And then a few of you probably are also just focused on specifically oil and gas. So it looks like some of you will be using the new ABB Totalflow and Fisher Rock stuff. Great, so resources for you, just like global resources. We do have once monthly training here in Portland, Maine, as well as we do travel around the world and domestically to deliver on-site classes. So if you have a training request like that, you can contact us, training@kepware.com, or fill out our training request form in the links there. Our YouTube channel is a huge library of webinars, videos, and demos. Very good reference there. So definitely encourage you to check that out if you've never seen it before. And again, if you want updates on upcoming webinars and events, please follow us our Kepware product training page, our spotlight page on LinkedIn. As always, you can contact sales for pre-sales support. We have great application engineers on that team who are really, amazing at giving customer consultations and helping out people to build projects if you have a project coming down the pipeline. If you have something that's existing and you need a little extra support, you can obviously contact our technical support team. And then, as always, any questions you have, training@kepware.com, and if we don't know the information, we will get you to the right person. Okay, wonderful. Well, that concludes the feature tour of KEPServerEX version 5.18. Release definitely highlights Kepware's position in the industry to provide data with ease, anywhere, anytime, and for anyone.